Welcome to the Right Time Podcast. The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
What's up, kiddos? The bad guy's back. It's the Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio, which is presented by Progressive Insurance. However, my name is Clinton Yates, and I'm filling in here on a Thursday. All guests on the Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. You can get in touch with me through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at ESPN Radio, at Clinton Yates. You hear the noise behind me. We're live at NABJ in New Orleans, Louisiana. It's a convention that brings together a lot of black journalists and prospective journalists. There's a job fair, which is where we happen to be right now at the ESPN booth. There's all sorts of panels that go on. For those of you who might be looking to get into the business, our younger listeners, or for those of you that are in the business looking for your way to find your way around, this is the convention you go to. Everybody's here. If you listened to the program yesterday, you heard some of our ESPN people come on the program and talk about their histories in the business and how they got to where they're going. And that's what we're going to do as well today. As people come by, we're going to try to grab folks. My man Tyler Tynes is coming on in a little bit. He wrote a good story for SB Nation about Will Smith, who used to play for the Saints. Going to hopefully have Steve Wyche of NFL Network later. Going to hopefully have couple other people come through. So that's what the vibe is going to be like today. We're basically live. We're here. We're in the building, and we're having fun. But let's get to it. You know who my favorite player is of all time for the Memphis Grizzlies? You probably do. It's Zach Randolph. And the reasons are obvious. He's never cared about anything, it seems. He's a little rough on the court. He's had old man game ever since he walked into the league. And he still does. But then he got traded to the Sacramento Kings. Kings have been trying to make a little move this summer. They picked up a couple people. They picked up Zebo. I believe Vince Carter still made that roster. George Hill making moves. Yeah, but that might not go so well now. Not because Zach Randolph is on the downside of his career, but because Zach Randolph got picked up on a felony marijuana possession charge last night. Most importantly, with intent to sell is part of that. Now, look, there's a couple things that are worth explaining here. Number one is that, from my understanding, somebody that has never even been in the back of a cop car but knows a thing or two about the legalities of drug laws as a result of simply being black in America, fairly certain that intent to sell is simply a matter of how much cash and how much product you have on you at the time. Meaning, if you have enough paper hanging around and you have enough weed hanging around, it is plausible that they can deduce that you are trying to sell, even if you are just a rich dude who likes weed a lot. So if you're saying to yourself, why would Zach Randolph be selling weed in the offseason? Understand what that means in terms of the charge. But let's not get it twisted. This story is rather wild. I'm just going to read from the ESPN.com story right now for a bit. Police recovered 2 guns, impounded 2 vehicles, and seized narcotics, LAPD said. According to the police report, Randolph was arrested at 11 p.m. Pacific time. Officials told ABC7 that officers were on routine patrol when they encountered a group drinking alcohol, smoking marijuana, and playing loud music while blocking a street at the Nickerson Gardens project in Watts. The officers then tried to disperse the crowd, and the disturbance escalated. Officers called for backup when the crowd grew and people began throwing bottles. Several police cars ended up with smashed windows and slashed tires. That's no small skirmish with police officers. It's one thing for the cops to roll by and break up a group of dudes out there blazing and having some beers. It's a whole other monster when a group of people decide to start throwing things at officers. Now, I'm not implicating Zach Randolph in any of this. Obviously, I have no idea. I wasn't there. But number one, this tells you a little something about how Zebo rolls when he rolls with his crew. Hanging out in Watts, smoking and drinking with your boys late at night, and then accosting the police when they show up is about as roughneck as it gets, at least as far as I'm concerned, with NBA off seasons. I don't know what you do when you're off your job, But I'll tell you this. I don't know how many people in the NBA are rolling like Zebo. And that's no disrespect. All right? Zebo does what Zebo's got to do. I just got to say, I am pretty, maybe not impressed, but it is remarkable that this is still how he rolls at this stage of his career. Because Zebo ain't no young man. Zach Randolph and I are the same age. And I know that if I hang out too late, I dang sure can't even get up and do radio the next day. Never mind run up and down the basketball court, but it is the offseason. Ultimately, though, I wonder what the Kings are going to feel about this. Because they just picked him up. He was in Memphis for a while. And I'm going to go ahead and presume that this wasn't the kind of thing that people in Memphis would have really cared about. Sacktown's a little different place. He lives in L.A. in the offseason. He's lived out there for a while in the offseason. He played out there for a while. And I want to say he picked up a drunken driving charge at one point when he played for the Clippers. Which, again, that happens. You know what I'm saying? I'm not out here trying to implicate that Zach is some thug because I don't necessarily believe that, nor do I particularly care. I just know that for a 36-year-old man to get involved in a situation like this at this stage of his NBA career, I got to say, I did not think I would see this from Zebo at this point. I ain't going to make no whole judgment pass on what his priorities are in his life. I'll tell you that it ain't easy to maintain that lifestyle and still be a productive NBA player at that age. Shannon, when you heard that they were throwing bottles at police cars, that's when this story took a whole new level for me. I don't know about you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, this wasn't just your regular, hey, let's see what's going on. The fact that they had the block literally blocked off and were throwing bottles at the cops. Like, this is wild. Like, this is on – it's basically on some inciting a riot type situation. Like, this is amazing.
Right. And, like, this is a scene you would expect to see in a Boys in the Hood, in a Menace to Society, in a South Central type scenario. Those are three classic movies from the 90s that if you haven't seen, you need to go to Netflix and or whatever your streaming service is right now and check them out. But, like, this is something you hear of. This is the type of scene you see in a movie. The street's blocked because, you know, that's just the easiest way to get it done. But if I'm the Kings, I might have to have a talk with Zebo. And I'm not saying you go crazy. You just say, yo, man, first of all, you're a little too old for this foolishness. And secondarily, what's up with your squad? Can't have this. You know what I mean? Zebo's supposed to come into that locker room and be sort of a veteran presence. Now, obviously, a part of that is the fact that he can just bust somebody upside the head whenever he needs to, because Zebo's that kind of dude, and Zebo also just plainly commands respect in the league as a veteran and as a ball player,
right,
most importantly. But this doesn't bode well.
And what's interesting also was that during the course of his time with Memphis, at some point, I don't know what year this happened, but Randolph became beloved. You know, I don't know if it was just because how identifiable he was with the city of Memphis, but he became beloved Zach Randolph. Not the same, Portland Trailblazer, L.A. Clipper, New York Knicks Zach Randolph. Like, this became another guy. I think the Grizzlies are even planning to retire his his jersey at some point. Like, this is totally different.
Yeah. And Zach Randolph, and to be fair, a lot of what I think Zach's appeal was this sort of roughneck mentality. That's why a lot of people like Zach Randolph. Zebo is not just a nickname, it is a persona. But when that persona leads you down the line of getting caught with a felony marijuana charge with intent to sell, again, that's not the look you want. We've clarified what the intent to sell is thing. But still, for the Kings, this is not good. Your offseason guy that you wanted to be the veteran leader comes in, and it turns out he's out there with his boys in L.A. getting picked up by the cops and his boys are then potentially inciting a riot? This is your locker room leader? I don't know that that's going to fly. Now, Sacramento isn't exactly some, super lily place in terms of the type of players that have been through there. But nonetheless, it doesn't bode well for the upcoming season in which they thought they were going to make a little noise for this dude to be in this spot at this moment. I ain't trying to square up with Zach Randolph, and I don't know anybody that is. But I know that he's going to have a sit-down with the owner of that team because what he's doing right now is not a good look for him or the Sacramento Kings. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones here on The Right Time. Coming up, my man Tyler Tynes from SB Nation is sitting right next to me. We're going to talk with him. It's The Right Time on ESPN Radio.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Welcome back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. Here on ESPN Radio, we're presented by Progressive Insurance. And all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Thursday. You can get in touch with us through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. We're live in New Orleans at NABJ 2017. It's been a good time so far. Been talking to people, bringing through random guests, and some of them happen to be my friends, such as SB Nation's Tyler Tynes. How you doing, Tyler?
What's good, Clinton?
So let me ask you, you're a younger man than I, and we've been talking to some veterans in this game for a long time about NABJ and what it means. You've been coming here for a while. Tell me a little bit about this experience for younger journalists who are looking to get in the game or looking to find their way in the industry at this point.
I mean, it's essential, right? You know, for black journalists, since we're so low in the field, right, and considered so low in the field, and there's not too many of us in the field, it's really hard for us to find our way in and to break through. And one thing that NABJ does is it fosters this community that's making and bringing white organizations to black spaces and getting us jobs, getting us internships and fellowships. So it kind of not only creates these opportunities for us and helps us and foster that talent, but it also makes some retention. You know, some black journalists will get into the game and kind of hate it because they don't have anybody they can kind of relate to. Right. They're often smaller places and they don't love it. But when you're younger and you're looking for job opportunities, and when you kind of think it's hopeless and you might not get a job, NABJ has been a really cool place to find these organizations that you love, talk to them, get your clips reviewed, and get your reels kind of, critiqued by an ESPN or CNN or ABC, and really just at the same time have a lot of fun. You go to a lot of different conferences around the country for journalism, and they're boring. They're bone dry. So these are kind of really fun. You're able to actually see a cool city and then better yourself and also maybe get a job. So. Right. Always worth it every year.
No doubt. So Tyler covers the intersection of race, culture, and sports and all that for SB Nation. And we are in New Orleans. We are in Louisiana. The case of former New Orleans Saints player Will Smith obviously all happened here. You covered that extensively. And if you guys haven't seen it, check it out on SBNation.com. The city of New Orleans claimed 2 men the moment Will Smith was killed. Tyler, start at the beginning for me in terms of when you got on this story, and we'll go from there.
So I happened to actually be in L.A. Kobe Bryant was retiring last year in April before he put up that amazing 60-point game that we'll never forget, right? And in the middle of the night, we were at a club, and I happened to check my phone, and I saw a lot of different pings about, some man had been killed in New Orleans by some thug. It was some thug in the middle of the night killed famous football player Will Smith. And I was like, I've seen Will Smith play football. He's a great defensive lineman. And then, as I started the job, I remember I was like, no, he was one of the best defensive linemen
Absolutely.
in New Orleans Saints history. And I called my editor, Elena Bergeron, the next morning and said, hey, something don't feel right about this case. Like, this is not just another shooting in a city like New Orleans or a Philly or a Memphis. Like something feels different. Like, football players just don't get killed randomly in cities. Like that doesn't really happen, right? And so as more information started to come out, I said, oh, no, there's definitely something wrong. Why are we having a grand jury hearing and a pretrial hearing 18 days after a man's been arrested? Why has he not been able to post bail? Why is the bail so high for killing a football player, right? And so I said, Elena, at worst, can I go? Can I go and see this trial through, or at least see this one piece of the trial through? She said, go. It's her hometown. I got down here, and they had a motions hearing to see if they released the man from jail.
Let's slow down here for a second.
Yeah.
When you got down to New Orleans,
right,
what was the feeling in the city like here where we are now? Because Will Smith, as you said, very beloved figure.
Right.
What was the tone like in New Orleans before anything related to the trial?
I was taking a lot of Uber rides, right, just going back and forth from the court to my hotel and Frenchman and Bourbon and everywhere, and folks were legitimately scared. Like folks, white folks were kind of like, okay, I want to put a gun in my car now. You know what I mean? Like, people on the bus were saying the same kind of things. Black folks were like, it's another day in New Orleans. So what's different? Why do y'all care now that somebody black got killed? Y'all never cared before nobody black got killed. Why are you all down here?
Right.
So folks were kind of taking it back quickly, but as more and more started to develop, a lot of black folks in the city were like, no, something is actually wrong. Something happened, and we don't know what it is.
You're listening to The Right Time on ESPN Radio with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Thursday. Tyler Tynes of SB Nation joins us. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Now you can test drive Snapshot to see how much you could save before switching to Progressive. Visit progressive.com/snapshot. Let's go to the trial. The man who actually did this, tell us a little bit about who he was, because as you said before, random thug didn't exactly fit the bill for who he was.
Right, and random thug is something obviously that we use to paint and further criminalize black people when crimes do happen, whether they are guilty or not. Cardell was a top 50 recruit in Louisiana in football. He was thought to be one of the best defensive tackles there was in the state, in a state that lives off football and feeds and eats off football. And by time the trial, we saw a different light of him. He was actually, he's a father. When we criminalize these people, we kind of forget their whole life stories. So he was a father. He was a football player. He was a truck driver. And it kind of became not a road rage incident, not a crazy man flashing a gun, but it seemed like Will Smith might have been a little complicit in what happened. It seemed like things had ramped up to a pace where it's Louisiana and half the people in the state own guns, so what do you expect is going to happen between anger and opportunity?
People get shot every day, B.
People get shot every day, B. So that's kind of what happened. And by the time we got to the trial, a lot of black folks in the city, this very popular woman, it was protesting this for the entire time. She said, we see black boys go up those steps and we never see them come back down. And that was another case of just New Orleans and the criminal justice system. We don't see, no one gets, killed and then 9 months later there's a trial.
Right.
So
what do you think you learned about the city of New Orleans, like I said, where we are right now, live at NABJ 2017, through the course of your reporting?
There's so many cities, especially blacker cities, that, suffer from, obviously, inherent racism and systemic racism, right? And these problems are either never going to go away or they're slow to change. There's no substantial change. And I learned that, this is just like any other black city. This is just like any other incident. And the only reason that people are digging into this case is because a famous football player got killed. And at the same time when Will Smith got killed, 5 other people got killed that day. And the time that Cardell Hayes has been sitting in jail up to the trial, hundreds of people have been killed. Not just in New Orleans, but all over the country. So why is it that we decided to care about this? Is it because a famous player got killed? Is it because it was 2 black men? Is it because it's New Orleans? Maybe it's a mix of everything involved. But I think the biggest thing that I learned, I think a lot of people learned from reading the reporting that we did, is that we can't often and immediately criminalize black people just because they do something that a white paper tells you that happened.
Right.
There's more facts to the night of the events, and I learned a whole bunch about what wasn't really reported over those 9 months.
I hear you. He's Tyler Tynes. He reports on race, culture, and sports, and the intersection of all those, and you can find him on Twitter at Tyler Ricky Tynes. Thank you, Tyler.
Appreciate you, Clint.
Coming up, we're looking and efforting for Steve Wyche, who's around here somewhere. You know his name because he broke the Colin Kaepernick story when he decided to sit for the national anthem first. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. Handcrafted, it's all the rage. From flour pressed soap to homemade hot sauce to artisanal pickles. You know you like artisanal pickles. Well, Firestone Complete Auto Care is glad it's catching on because they've been handcrafting repairs since 1926, and their 4,000 ASC certified technicians work hard every day to help cars keep running like new. Before people were making organic greeting cards and rock jewelry in their basements, Firestone Complete Auto Care has been hard at work in the garage, tightening, torquing, and wrenching. And they back that work with their fixed right promise, guaranteeing your car is fixed right, your repair is priced right, and the work is completed right on time. Keep your car running newer, longer. When the road gets rough, you need a set of tires that can get tough. Right now, at Firestone Complete Auto Care, get $70 by mail on a Bridgestone Visa prepaid card when you buy a set of 4 eligible Bridgestone tires. Whatever you drive, drive a Firestone. Offer valid August 10th through October 8th. In-store only. Claim form required. This excludes Blizzak. Restrictions apply. See claim form for eligible tires and details. Prepaid card issued by the Bancorp Bank, member FDIC. It's the right time on ESPN Radio.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Welcome back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Thursday. We are presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. You want to find me on Twitter? Flip the coin, kid. Come get destroyed at ESPN Radio, at Clinton Yates. I tell you now, I'll tell you again, if you step into my mentions with some nonsense, I reserve the right to embarrass you in front of all of your friends. One of my friends, my new friend, is joining me right now. Steve Wyche of the NFL Network is here. I saw him walking by in the lobby. I said, sir, would you please come on the show? And you were gracious enough to say yes. How are you?
Yeah, man, with that threat, man. I'm like, I don't want to step into this dojo right now, man. You might hit me with the roundhouse. Wow.
That's just for the people in the public.
I hear you.
Who I don't know.
I'm with you. If you come incorrect on my Twitter timeline, it's over.
Right, exactly.
There will be body chalk around your
Thank you.
Your next mention.
I'm glad we see eye to eye on this. So we're live here in New Orleans at NABJ. This event is something that is important to a lot of people. We're going to get further into the discussion of diversity in newsrooms, but just for you, Steve, personally, what does it mean to you? How long have you been coming to this, and what have you gotten out of it over the course of your career?
Well, I'd say what's crazy is this is my maiden voyage.
Really?
I have been in the business since 1989.
Okay.
But this is the first time I really haven't had a scheduling conflict. Because as long as I've been covering the NFL, this usually falls like Hall of Fame weekend or something. And I covered the NBA for years. And after the long season, or my kids were young or whatever, we were going to trips elsewhere. So this is my maiden voyage. And, and what's fantastic is we're seeing a lot of – there's so much incredible talent here at NABJ. And it's amazing that so much of it is here in one place. Because I know in a week I'm going to go to a press box, and it's just going to be me, being maybe the one or two persons of color in a press box, or go into a newsroom at NFL Network or whatever, and there's going to be 2 or 3 of us in that newsroom. And it's just so – to see us all in this fishbowl right now, and then we're going to be dunked back into the ocean. We're all going to go our divergent ways. And it's just weird to see all this talent here, and then knowing how dispersed it is and such a lack of strength in numbers, so to speak, when we go back into our individual workplaces. It's just very intriguing to kind of picture that dynamic.
It's a little jarring on some levels, too,
really
because you see so many people here and you think, oh, I know this person, I know that person, and then, like you said, you get out into the real world and you're like, how is it possible that it doesn't translate?
But, the talent. The greatness, when you see Kevin Merida, who runs The Undefeated, and Bill Rhoden, who recently retired from the New York Times, and Jay Adonde, and Michael Eaves, and L. Duncan, and so many of the White House correspondents and things like that, all in one place. Like, man, this is a serious Pro Bowl. It's not just the 2 best teams in the Super Bowl. This is the Pro Bowl. This is the best of the best.
Right.
And we're all in one space. And then, again, when the real world comes back, we're all dispersed, and we have so many battles to fight while we're doing our jobs, just in terms of being able to get stories approved and telling stories the way that we really could. But it's empowering, to have everybody here and have these healthy discussions. Of course, God, probably the only name I've heard more than Donald Trump down here is probably Colin Kaepernick.
Right.
And just to have some of these discussions going on about how his story has evolved over the past year, how society's story has evolved over the past year, it is just really incredible, because it is a phenomenon.
We're talking with Steve Wyche of the NFL Network here on The Right Time on ESPN Radio with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates filling in. We're live at NABJ from New Orleans, Louisiana. Obviously, the Kaepernick story is one that is credited almost directly to you because of what he chose to do last year, Week 3. He sat before he knelt.
Yep.
Kneeled, whatever. And he talked to you about it. And a big part of that story was that you were the only one who noticed, and you were the only one who asked him about it, and he probably felt comfortable, obviously, as a man of color talking to another man of color, and said as much. Tell me a little bit about that experience specifically in terms of the day you guys had that conversation.
Well, what's interesting is I do think had somebody asked Kaepernick about it, I don't know if his answer would have been any different, whether it had been a white person, Asian person. I think this is something he'd been wanting to say. I had heard all summer that he was getting very involved in a lot of issues. You check his social media feeds, very much involved in Black Lives Matter. So I don't know if it necessarily the message would have changed. I did have a relationship with Kaepernick going all the way back to the Senior Bowl when he was coming out of the University of Nevada. So when I would see him in the locker rooms, you would talk. When I would see him at certain functions, we would talk. So there was absolutely a level of trust there with him. I also think because of the credibility I've established, Kaepernick saw me deal with his teammates for years, with the Frank Gores of the world, with the Vernon Davises of the world.
Right.
That talking with me, it wasn't just going to be like some explosive, I'm doing this to make myself look better for the big story. I've covered enough big stories. And so if you read the original article, it's funny because I go back and read it from time to time because some of the reactions and stuff I hear people talk about today, I was like, if you go back and you listen to his original message, it is so on point. It is so well thought out. And he hasn't wavered from anything he said back then. And it's just, we talked for a long time after the game. It was a 10-minute interview, and we talked about 10 minutes afterwards. Me being a 50-year-old man, him being in his mid-20s. And he knew. He knew this was going to be explosive.
Right.
He understood that he could lose his career and his endorsements over this. He said so publicly. I don't know if he necessarily expected it would be at this point. But he didn't do this knee-jerk. It wasn't an emotional move for him. So
Right.
it was a very intriguing conversation initially.
Steve, let me ask you this. You've obviously been in the game for years as a veteran. Did being a part of this story affect your career in terms of your relationship with some of your peers?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. I haven't really thought about it. Sure, a lot of people are like, hey, you're the guy who broke the story. But, it's not necessarily put me on a bigger profile in my job at the network. It wasn't something as to where, let's say, I gained from it. I definitely didn't hurt from it. A lot of people, when they hear the name, they put two and two together. Okay, you're the one who broke the Kaepernick story. I did a lot of interviews because of it, but it wasn't something that necessarily, let's say, all of a sudden put me on the front pages or tore me down in any type of negative way.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
The Kaepernick situation for me is one that, I mean, I've obviously talked at so much length about, but at this stage, I feel has become, I don't want to use the word bastardized, but it's moved so far sort of left, if you will, from where it originally started in terms of people like Spike Lee potentially trying to hold rallies in front of the NFL and so on and so forth. I want to get, if you don't mind staying for another segment,
sure,
we can talk a little bit more about it on the backside, but I do want to get your impressions right now of whether or not you thought it would ever go this far when you first had that conversation a year ago, the 10-minute conversation you referred to.
Yes. I really did. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf for the Denver Nuggets didn't stand, and the reaction that people had of him not recognizing the flag. I mean, he played for a couple more years, but he was pretty much done. So I knew right away this honestly could be it. And he discussed it. We discussed it.
Yeah.
We discussed it. He knew, but I knew right away this was going to be a big story. The blowback could be significant. He was dealing with a league with a national anthem and patriotism in the military. Even though he said this isn't about the military, law enforcement. I knew all those things in play.
Okay.
That we could be at this point.
He's Steve Wyche. He works for the NFL Network. I'm Clinton Yates. I'm filling in for Bomani Jones here on The Right Time on ESPN Radio. You're going to hang with us for another segment. We'll get into the Colin Kaepernick stuff. More specifically, we're live at NABJ in New Orleans. You're listening to ESPN Radio.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Well, welcome back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Thursday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Holla at me on Twitter through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Customers who switch to Progressive save an average of $500. Call or click today and find out if we could save you hundreds on your car insurance. I'm joined by Steve Wyche of the NFL Network. We've been discussing Colin Kaepernick. If you forgot, Steve was the man who Colin originally talked to after he decided to sit in protest of what he felt was and is unfair treatment of black folks by police officers in this nation. Let's hear quickly, though, what the San Diego Chargers coach had to say about whether or not Colin Kaepernick should or should not still be in the league.
I think he certainly earned the right to be on the team, and he's done a lot in this league, and he's still a young guy, so it wouldn't surprise me at all if he wasn't on someone's roster real soon.
Awesome. Thanks for that ringing endorsement of the situation.
Yeah, I mean, look, we've heard this universally from coaches and players. No one's going to come out and say, no, he shouldn't be on a team because he stinks or because of his political stance. That's just not what we do.
Right.
I mean, you just don't, because you never know. He could be on a team. He could get hurt. I don't think he's going to get signed. I mean, I've been saying it for months that I do not think
the ship has sailed.
I think the ship has sailed.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of the owners – they talk about blackball. I don't think the NFL came out and told teams don't sign him. I don't think the NFL cares less. Right now he's a backup. He's not going to be a starter.
Right.
Okay? But I think so many of these owners are, one, afraid of potential public backlash, even though that's BS because some people don't show up at the stadiums. There will be other people to fill their seats.
Mm-hmm.
I think they are more worried about law enforcement in their particular cities saying we're not going to provide security at your stadiums.
Okay.
We're not going to give you police escorts on your buses from the hotels to venues. I think they're more worried about that. And there is a military backlash. But you know what's interesting about this, Clinton, is the two teams that have publicly said we're interested in Colin Kaepernick. The Seattle Seahawks, the one team with the stones to actually have a face-to-face meeting with him, and then the Ravens. they have caught so much hell for not signing him. Not the 30 teams that have laid in the shadows, right?
That's a good point.
But the 2 teams that actually said, okay, we're interested in him. They're the ones catching the backlash. So now, why would those 30 other teams step out into the light? Well, they're saying, good Lord, the 2 teams that that express interest in him, they're catching hell. We're good right where we are because we'll let them take the hits. We'll just ignore the whole thing.
Steve Wyche of the NFL Network joins us right now on the right time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. I'm Clinton Yates filling in here during the break. You mentioned something very specific about the timing on the calendar. The protest that is scheduled for outside of the NFL headquarters is going to be August 29th or 23rd, I believe, which coincides with the 1-year anniversary of when he did this. But a year ago, the country was in a very different place, Steve.
Right. Where were we in the country? We were on the precipice of the presidential election. So right now, racial tensions were inflamed. By the way, a certain candidate was kind of stoking the flames. You had so many people who were disgusted with the whole process. So then here's Kaepernick, right in the middle of, right before a presidential election where we're clearly going to have a change in leadership. Emotions are high, throwing a match onto the powder keg of patriotism.
In sports.
In sports. I'm not going to stand up for the national anthem. Whoa. That flag is sacred to a lot of people. And in the midst of this whole political dynamic that was going on in this country, he just threw a landmine into the whole middle. So it's interesting. I don't know. I do think a lot of people have been offended, but let's say this happened into the final year of Barack Obama's presidential administration. I don't know if tensions would have necessarily been as inflamed as they were when he did this last year. I just think, and I think you said it best, people were really looking for something to hate.
Yeah.
And he stepped right in it. Now, he galvanized a lot of people, a ton of people. But at the same time, he offended a ton of people. And right now in this country, we don't let go.
That's true.
We don't let go. If you've done something to upset us, especially when it comes to patriotism, then you're done. Everyone is looking, I won't say everyone, but a lot of people are looking past the fact that he said, I'm doing this to kind of stand up for people who are being wrongly persecuted by law enforcement and law enforcement not being punished.
Right.
Okay, my conversation, that was it. That was his message. And so much has got lost in that you rarely hear that. You rarely hear that part of the discussion.
Last thing I'll ask you, what do you think his future is? And I don't just mean in a football context, but as a human being. Kaepernick has done a lot. He's given, suits to homeless people looking for job interviews. He's donated money and food to Somalia. He's, lent his hand to urban farming initiatives. Where do you think Colin Kaepernick's future lies as either philanthropist, activist, or whatever outside of the world of football?
This might sound crazy to some people, but if the NFL, if he doesn't get a job right there, he has been made into a martyr of sorts. But here's a young guy who has been denied the right to work at what he does because of a political stance that he took. So there are going to be a lot of people. I mean, he could have the speaking tours.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll be very much in demand on college campuses and places like that. Who knows? He might want to run for political office. I will tell you this right now. If for those who have never spoken to Colin Kaepernick, he is incredibly smart. He is very smart. He is very well spoken. But I do think he'll become a philanthropist at some point. Who knows? Maybe the book deal and all of that. But he's got a lot of life to live.
Yeah.
So whatever he decides to do, he's going to do well. Like I said, he's a very, very smart guy. And I think he thinks things through. He may not have thought we'd have been to this point, but again, a lot of the stuff is not catching him off guard.
And that's sort of the thing for me. I think that at this point, there is an argument that Colin Kaepernick playing football will take away from what he's trying to do. I think there are certain people that will somewhat, I don't want to say forget, but if Colin Kaepernick, let's just say, gets on a team and all of a sudden is a beast, I think it will be a very strange effect because people will forget about what he was trying to do because the football eventually will always overshadow it, and that sort of bothers me.
It depends if he speaks up.
That's true.
I don't think Colin Kaepernick will be silenced.
He's Steve Wyche. He's a guy I've respected for a long time. We're live here at NABJ in New Orleans. Thank you, Steve, for coming out.
Thanks for having me on. I really do appreciate it.
I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones here on the right time. We're live at NABJ. Got more guests rolling through as we do. Coming up, going to talk about what Charles Barkley thinks about Colin Kaepernick if he were an NBA player. It's the right time on ESPN Radio.
Thanks for listening to the Right Time Podcast. Please come back tomorrow for more. And don't forget to listen to the Right Time with Bomani Jones from 4 p.m. to 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Okay, Kevin, for the grand prize of $1 million. What color is the White House?
I know this.
5 seconds.
Oh, switching to Geico could save you a bunch of money on car insurance?
Okay. Judges? That's true, Kevin. They'll allow it. Congratulations. You're a winner.
Woo!
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Welcome to the Right Time Podcast. The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
If you need a friend, get a dog. You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. I'm Clinton Yates. I'm filling in here. I'm in New Orleans. NABJ 2017. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. You want to get in touch with me? Hit me up on Twitter on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at ESPN Radio, at Clinton Yates. Right now, it's time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. I'm at NABJ. A lot of people are at NABJ. Steve Wyche of the NFL Network just joined us. A lot of people joined us yesterday. We have more to come. One of the people who's here is NBA legend Charles Barkley. He said on a panel today that he believes that if Colin Kaepernick were an NBA player, he still wouldn't be signed. He said, quote, the dude is getting blackballed because he's messing with those dudes, as in the NFL owners' money. Now, look, I love Charles. I think Charles is a great analyst, but this analogy is beyond off base. I would say that if he was sitting right here. Because in the NBA, number one, roster sizes are smaller, and number two, most importantly, guaranteed contracts change the game when it comes to what you say. There's a reason why the NFL is not nearly as progressive as a lot of these other leagues out here. Because the players themselves can't afford to put themselves in these situations. The NBA is on the forefront of all of these sorts of demonstrations for exactly that reason. The players in the NBA are the least replaceable of all of the four major professional sports. Obviously. You got 15 guys on a roster, max. It ain't football. It dang sure ain't baseball. In hockey, they're playing all over the place on multiple continents. Not that they're not doing that in basketball, but you get my point here. And so to say that if he were in the NBA, he still wouldn't be signed, well, he would have never been moved off of a roster in the first place as a result of this, because the cutthroat nature is not the same in the NBA. More importantly, I'm not sure I understand why we have to keep trying to compare this situation from an NFL standpoint to anything else. Standalone, it's news enough as is. And we heard what the San Diego coach had to say about it. If this were some other league, there's just no way to compare it one for one. If he was a hockey player, like, what? No. We probably wouldn't look at this the same way. If he was a baseball player, which he was a baseball player, if he was in the major leagues. Sidebar, guys do all sorts of goofy stuff during the national anthem in the major leagues, in case you didn't know that. Go to a game next time and watch what the players in the bullpen do next time you're at a game during the national anthem. All sorts of shenanigans. If he was a baseball player, this would have probably gone a little differently as well. But the whole point is that the NFL is not analogous to any other league. They own an entire day of the week, as was said in the movie Concussion. They're the biggest deal going, whether you like it or not, which is exactly why Kaepernick knew what he was doing. This need to compare to other stuff is just beyond me from an intellectual standpoint. And I don't really understand, outside of the fact that a lot of black dudes play in the NBA, why would we be doing this? You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. Clinton Yates filling in here on a Thursday, live in New Orleans at NABJ 2017. That's the National Association of Black Journalists, the convention and the job fair happening right now, where I am speaking from. But the Kaepernick situation to me has moved to a level that I'm not really sure I necessarily understand. For example, choosing to protest outside of the NFL headquarters is a move that is a tad quizzical in my mind for a number of reasons. Number one, the timing. I understand that it's the one-year anniversary, if you will, of when he initially sat, not kneeled. Let's not forget, he sat during the national anthem first, kneeled at a later date during the anthem. I get the one-year anniversary, but right now, if you're picking up another quarterback, you're doing it out of complete desperation. There are actual football timelines that make a difference at this stage that would make it difficult for some people to pick him up, that I understand. And the other thing that's a little strange to me is the notion of boycotting the league because one guy didn't make a team. I get it in the sort of larger macro sense of, if this injustice is passing, I will remove myself entirely from it. But I feel like most of the people who will be at this protest are not the kind of people who are making a large dent in what NFL fandom is anyway, which is fine. I mean, that's not a knock. I'm not saying that there's no point for doing it because it won't be specifically effective. I'm just saying that as a person who agreed with how Colin Kaepernick went about what he did and agreed with the statements he made specifically regarding police brutality, frankly, I struggle with what is a sort of proper or at least sensible way to try to, I don't want to say take it out on the NFL, but that's what a lot of people want to do. It's a difficult one. Because what's going to happen at front of the NFL headquarters? Goodell's going to come out and say, hey, guys, nice to see you. Happy Wednesday. No. But it will make a lot of headlines, and it will probably be on a lot of television stations. But I'm just not sure how that brings more light to what Colin is actually talking about. Because it's not football. It's police brutality. So protesting the league, while that might bring some more eyeballs to Colin Kaepernick's situation, ultimately it's press for the very people who don't want him in the league, if you believe they're blackballing him to begin with. You know what I'm saying, Shannon? Like, it doesn't add up necessarily to me, like, why, if you're more concerned about his cause, you don't go to the root of what he's actually talking about as opposed to football itself. Whether or not you're watching football is not going to change how police treat black and brown people in this country. That's for sure. There are structural issues with law enforcement, never mind the inherent racism that exists in a lot of people in this country for whatever reason, that ain't got jack to do with Roger Goodell and never will. I don't think that the protest in front of the NFL is a bad idea. I think that if I were Colin Kaepernick and I knew that what I was eventually trying to get at really didn't involve the league, I was simply using the league as a platform, I would say to anybody supporting my cause, please step off of that platform and go to the source of the problem. That's what I would say. Or at least that's where I would focus my energies if I was the one in charge. But I'm not the one in charge. I'm just a guy sitting here yelling on a microphone. You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in here. That was Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. Like I said, we're live in New Orleans at NABJ, the convention, the career fair. We've had people coming through all day. We are efforting the great Gus Johnson to come up next, so we'll see if we can grab him. We had Steve Wyche earlier. Later in the program, some other people are going to join us. My man Kofi from SB Nation. Myron Medcalf is going to join us as well. Should be a fun day. You never know. Maybe even somebody whose name you're very familiar with. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones. This is The Right Time on ESPN Radio.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Welcome back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Thursday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Hit me up on the WayneHunterFlowers.com Twitter feed, fam, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. We're going to switch gears a little bit to go to my favorite sport, baseball. MLB announced on Wednesday a little something they call Players Weekend. That's going to happen on the weekend of August 25th through August 27th. They're going to bring in new uniforms, new hats, and they're going to include nicknames on the jerseys. Now, if you've not seen this, Shannon tweeted it out yesterday. There's a picture, there's like a what we'll call a contact sheet of all of the different uniforms that they're going to use. Now, look, baseball needs a lot. Baseball has issues with all sorts of things, from marketing to promotion to getting people in the seats to getting people to watch TV. It has effectively become a regional game in many regards, and that's fine. But let me tell you something. I like this little move. These unis are fly. I'm going through these right now, and some of these jerseys are kind of hot. Never mind the hats. And I'm always a big proponent of mixing things up on the uniform front. I'm a uni guy when it comes to part of the things I like about sports. And if you fiddle with the uniforms and you do it well, you automatically catch my eye. I can't remember what year it was, Shannon, when they did that future stuff with the jerseys. But those were horrible. These, however, are very, very dope. I'm going to just go through some of these looking at them right now. I know it's a visual medium, but you're just going to have to look at it for yourself and understand what I'm talking about. The Rays have a glorious little number. They look like Little League uniforms. They got a little baby blue front, yellow sleeves with a yellow hat. Just a great look.
Yeah, that was actually part of the overall design with the alternate jerseys. They were actually inspired by youth league designs, kind of harken these pros to when they played as kids.
That makes sense. The Marlins one is fly. The Phillies have an especially good-looking one, as do the Redlegs. And these hats. I mean, these hats are the coolest things I've seen Major League Baseball put out in a while, and I tend to like what Major League Baseball does with their alternate hats. Their all-star deals are typically pretty good. This is a very smart move by Major League Baseball, mixing things up on a uniform front. I might have to cop me one of these hats. This might be a situation where I cop a hat that's not even a Nationals hat. And I don't really do that like that because I don't like wearing teams' gear that I don't support. But some of these are extremely dope. This little baby blue Kansas City Royals jump. Ooh, that piece is clean.
All right.
As for the nicknames, what's up?
Oh, no, that's exactly what I was going to ask you next, is your thoughts on the players able to have the nicknames on the back of their jerseys.
I'd like that less than I like the uniforms. Because nicknames, to me, are kind of cool. But nicknames work because they're not your name. You know what I'm saying? It's not the same thing when you put a random nickname. Now, there's a nickname hierarchy. There's the nickname that is your sort of title. I think of Ken Griffey in this case, the Kid. And then there's the nickname that people call you who know you. And if you put the nickname that people who know you call you on the back of your jersey, that's a little weird. But also, on the flip side of that, not everybody who plays in big league baseball has a recognizable nickname that anybody cares about. So ultimately, you get a bunch of weird monikers on the back of jerseys that aren't going to do much other than provide fodder for the telecast, which is fine. I've said a million times, we need to get to know these players better. So from a visual standpoint, I think it's going to look a little silly. But I do think if it means that you get to see more of the personality of the players, you've completed the task, which is why it's ultimately smart. Because some of these nicknames, are very bizarre. Of course, we know Aaron Judge's All Rise is what's going to be on his jersey. Noah Syndergaard from the Mets is going to wear Thor on the back. And almost perhaps the coolest part about all this is that they're changing the logo of Major League Baseball on the hats. Now, you all know the logo of Big League Baseball. A lot of people think it's Harmon Killebrew. I'm not sure if that's been confirmed or not. MLB won't confirm it, I think mainly because they don't want to give Harmon Killebrew a bunch of money. Not dissimilar situation to the Jerry West NBA circumstance. But they've changed the logo to look like a kid evolving all the way up to a man. And it moves from blue to red. So, like, you know how you see those pictures of, like, Homo sapiens moving all the way up to Homo erectus? It's sort of like that with a 5-person progression. And it's really cool. I would buy a T-shirt with this logo on it probably before I would buy any of this other stuff. It's very dope. I like this. This is one of the best things I've seen Major League Baseball do in a long time. They got socks to go with it to boot. Paul Lucas over at UniWatch is having a great time with this. So good job, Major League Baseball. I enjoy that. I see Gus Johnson standing right next to me, so I'm going to get him on the air right now and get out of here early. I'm Clinton Yates filling in for Bomani Jones on the right time on ESPN Radio. Handcrafted, it's all the rage, from flour-pressed soap to homemade hot sauce to artisanal pickles, whatever those are. Well, Firestone Complete Auto Care is glad it's catching on because they've been handcrafting repairs since 1926. And their 4,000 ASC-certified technicians work hard every day to help keep cars running like new. Before people were making or getting greeting cards and rock jewelry in their basement, Firestone Complete Auto Care has been hard at work in the garage, tightening, torquing, and wrenching. And they back that work with their fixed right promise, guaranteeing your car is fixed right, your repair is priced right, and the work is completed right on time. Keep your car running newer, longer. When the road gets rough, you need a set of tires that can get tough. Right now at Firestone Complete Auto Care, get $70 by mail on a Bridgestone Visa prepaid card when you buy a set of 4 eligible Bridgestone tires. Whatever you drive a Firestone. Offers valid August 10th through October 8th. In-store only. Claim form required. Excludes Blizzak. Restrictions apply. See claim form for eligible tires and details. Prepaid card issued by the Bancorp Bank. Member FDIC. It's the right time on ESPN Radio.
The right time with Bomani Jones.
Just two dope boys right here. It's the right time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on the right time up here via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Thursday, live from NABJ in New Orleans, Louisiana. You want to hit me up? Hit me up on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed at Clinton Yates. And I am honored to be joined by a guy whose name you know, whose voice you know, who I've been watching my whole life ever since he was on local TV in D.C., Gus Johnson. Mr. Johnson, how are you?
Hey, Clint, what's up, man?
I'm chilling,
You can't
man.
be saying that because, you know, you in your 30s, right?
I am,
You
sir.
can't say that, man, because you were a little boy back then, so you're making me feel old.
This is true, but that just means you've got a lot of experience. Tell me a little bit about your time here at NABJ. We've talked to various people who've come through on the desk here. For some people, it's a matter of rejuvenation. For some people, it's a reunion. For other people, obviously, they're looking to get a job. How do you feel about what this is as a production and as an entity itself?
Nah, man, I think it's been great. You know, just seeing some of the faces that I've known for almost 30 years and, you know, talking to cats. And, yes, it is a homecoming. It's a family reunion. It's a fraternity meeting. Having a chance to go to the different discussions and talk about what's going on and exchange ideas and opinions. And I just think it's been wonderful. And I like being around the young people here because they're aspiring and, you know, they're the future. And it's nice to talk to them and to try to pass on some words of wisdom or answer some questions that they have. And it's NABJ, so that also means, with all that I just said, there are also some very, very, very beautiful sights in the building.
We're talking with Gus Johnson, the legend here. You've worked in so many different fields and so many different sports, Gus. Tell me a little bit about how you feel the diversity in the game is at this stage versus, for example, when you first got into it.
Well, I think it's getting better, but it still has a long way to go, and the diversity has to take place not in front of the camera. I think we see the diversity in front of the camera, but we don't see it behind the camera. Executive producers and directors and associate directors and broadcast associates, people that make the business go, who push the button to get you on the air, so who make the decisions to put you on the air. So I think that's the next frontier that has to be conquered, and I think that hope springs eternal, and it's going to happen.
Steve Wyche of the NFL Network was here earlier, and I talked a lot about the fact that when Colin Kaepernick first decided to sit for the national anthem, Steve was the first guy and the only guy he talked to about it. And what my point was about it was newsroom diversity, not just for the sake of posterity is cool, but also for the sake of you getting better stories when it comes to the business.
I think that's what has to be understood, and I think that we have a lot of credible current journalists, and we have some great young kids that are coming up, and that's all part of it. But I think the most important thing is the diversity and the people that make the decisions on who tells the story, and that's where we have to. I think our business has to evolve a bit in terms of our executives and our like I said, our producers and our directors, and the kids that get a chance to be the associate directors and the broadcast associates to move up, to get into those positions, to have more of a diverse executive staff and production staff, as well as an on-air staff.
You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Thursday live from NABJ in New Orleans, Louisiana. We're brought to you by Pennzoil Synthetics, taking synthetic motor oil performance to a whole new level. Make the switch to Pennzoil Synthetics today. Gus, a lot of people know you for your famous calls. A lot of people know you from, internet lore, if you will, from the work that you do. But I wonder, Gus, what are the sports when you're not on the air that you enjoy just to sit and watch on your own? What is burning with you as far as not just the stuff that you cover, but the stuff that you watch, in your personal time?
I really don't watch sports that much during my personal time, to be honest with you. Yeah, because I'm just in it for almost 30 years. So if I'm at the bar, when the game is on, I'll glance at it. I like the NBA, of course, because they have so many stars. I love LeBron James and Steph Curry and Kevin Durant and James Harden and Russell Westbrook and, Chris Paul and Carmelo Anthony. And I love to watch the NBA. That's my thing.
Okay.
I think more than anything else when I am watching sports. But, I don't spend a lot of time watching sports. I like music. I like theater. I like TV shows. I love one of my favorite shows is Power.
Oh, really? You're watching Power?
I love what's going on with Ghost. He just got out of jail, and Angela, she knows that he didn't do it. Somebody planted the gun, and now we know that Angela knows who planted the gun. Tasha messing around with Ghost's lawyer, which is just bad. Now Lorenz Tate is in there, and that's his man. And it looks like they're going to have a relationship. Ghost's son is acting crazy. He thinks he's a thug. And after messing around with Kanan, and then Kanan spared his life when he could have just ended him right there.
I don't watch Power, so I hope there's no spoilers. No spoilers
it's
there.
Not. It's old now. It's a bit odd. So anyway, I like stuff like that.
Well, let me ask you this: if you're an NBA guy, you've seen a lot. What do you feel about the discussion? People saying that LeBron James is a better player than Michael Jordan. Do you think that's relevant or even
he's a different player. He's a different player than Michael Jordan. I think he better rebounder. I think his assists may be a little bit better. Floor general. Is he better than Michael Jordan? No, I don't think he's better than Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player. As a matter of fact, he's just been voted the greatest African-American athlete of all time. From the undefeated. And I thought that was interesting, that he was number one in front of Muhammad Ali, who I think was 3.
He was 3 behind Jackie Robinson, who was number 2.
And Jackie Robinson was number 2. So you understand Jackie Robinson and Muhammad Ali, not only were they incredible athletes, but their social stands on issues facing African Americans was a big deal. But I don't think anybody is going to ever be better than Michael Jordan. Maybe equal Michael Jordan, but not better.
Sticking with basketball, we've heard a lot of talk in the last couple of years about the expansion of the NCAA tournament. I know for a lot of people who consider themselves purists, they sort of feel like, well, once you open the floodgates, you're going to have basically every team in America in the tournament. How do you feel about how the NCAA tournament has evolved?
I think it's perfect. Just leave it alone. Don't mess with it.
68 or 64?
Just not 70.
Okay.
You know? I mean, I haven't called the tournament in a lot of years, so there's 64 teams right now because they got the play-in games, right?
Right, but I guess so that technically makes 68.
68 teams. So, yeah, that's fine. It's like I don't want to dilute the product, and I think if you continue to expand it, you know, teams are going to get in there that, you know, really don't deserve to get into the tournament because they haven't put in the work during the regular season.
He's Gus Johnson. He joins us here on The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates. Filling in here live at NABJ 2017, New Orleans. What do you think about the overall Colin Kaepernick situation? We've seen a lot of stuff in terms of what he said, whether or not he's being blackballed, whisper campaign, so on and so forth. Do you have any thoughts on where that's been so far in terms of not just his message, but how the NFL has treated him as well?
Well, it just seems like the owners don't want him in the league because he's too talented of a quarterback to not even get a tryout or for somebody to sign him. I mean, they're signing guys from the Arena League. You know, they just signed Jay Cutler to a $10 million one-year deal with an opportunity to get $3 or $4 more million in incentives. And Colin Kaepernick has played in the Super Bowl. He's won an NFC championship game. I know he hasn't been as productive of a player over the last couple of years since Jim Harbaugh left, but, you know, I understand
it. Does it bother you
it.
On any level?
It does bother me. Yeah, it bothers me because the man didn't commit a crime. He just expressed how he felt about African-American men and our relationship over the last few years with the police and black boys getting killed in the street. And that was his silent protest to take a knee. And now he said that he won't take a knee anymore if he signs with another team. And for them not to give him an opportunity to play, I just think is wrong. And hopefully, you know, unfortunately, we don't have owners in the NFL like a Al Davis anymore.
Right.
Where you could have a certain kind of individuality, but that wouldn't prohibit you from being a team if you had the talent to play. So,
he's Gus Johnson. He's a legend in the broadcasting game, and I'm happy to have been able to sit down with him. Thank you, Gus.
My man.
Coming up, John U. Bacon, who's co-author of the John Saunders memoir, Playing Hurt. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones on ESPN Radio.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Thursday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Joining us on the line right now is John U. Bacon. He is author of Playing Hurt, My Journey from Despair to Hope. It is a memoir about John Saunders, whom all of you know from his time as a sportscaster with this network for some years. John, how are you?
Doing very well, Clinton. Thank you.
Let's get into this right quick. The book is a book about John's struggle with depression. I'll ask you very plainly, why did you write this book?
I wrote it with John at his request. John, in 2011, was on the set of ABC College Football with Jesse Palmer. He stood up too fast. He's a diabetic with some circulation issues. He blacked out. He fell backwards and hit his head so hard that his concussion put him into Mount Sinai for 6 weeks, where he relearned how to walk and talk and read and write. And his recovery was very slow and started getting him down to the point where he looked over the Tappan Zee Bridge considering suicide. So it was a very tough period for John, and at the end of it, John and I were already good friends at that point for about 15 years. He told me that he wanted to write the book, and I said, "Are you sure?" And he said, "Absolutely." So at that point in 2012, we started writing the book here in New York, and then did it for 4 years before John passed away.
You said that he was a friend of yours. A lot of people knew John on the air as a very sort of affable, I wouldn't say happy-go-lucky, but a nice guy. And I don't want to get into these sort of stigmas that have to do with depression and so forth, but people believe certain things about those who struggle with mental illness. Did you know anything about his struggles as a friend and as somebody that you knew, that he knew for a long time?
That's a great question, Clinton. I knew very little in 15 years about this. I knew a little bit, but not a lot. But after this, he started spilling everything, and it turns out, I mean, the list was pretty incredible. It was physical abuse by his father, sexual abuse by his older female cousins. It was self-medication, self-mutilation, and, of course, concussions and depression on top of all that. And even his wife, Wanda, who's obviously very close to John for 30 years, even she was surprised by about 10, 20% of this book. So John did not share this with almost anybody.
We're talking with John Bacon, author of Playing Hurt, My Journey from Despair to Hope. It's a memoir about John Saunders here on The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates filling in. Not to get too sort of morbid about this, but if I may ask, what were some of the details in terms of things that he might have done? Because, look, a lot of people understand one can gloss over it and say self-medication or self-hurt. What did that mean in terms of specifics for anybody who might, well, frankly, be going through the same things themselves and don't know what they're doing is actually probably symptomatic of something else?
Well, I'd say in this case, Clinton, that is a very fair question because John holds nothing back in this. For him, when he's in high school, he would take a metal hanger and light a butane lighter underneath it and then press that into his skin and his thighs, which is obviously very painful, until the skin actually fell off. So it was a serious condition in his case, no question about that. Self-medication, he was dealing drugs out of his locker in high school and eventually got into cocaine and some other stuff. So that was also pretty serious. He got out of that, all of that, when he met Wanda in 1986. That's pre-ESPN, and he quit drinking altogether in 2011. But that's a long history of self-medication as well as self-mutilation.
You're friends with him. You were friends with him, I should say better. What did you know about John? What did you like about John? I understand you wrote this book, but I know that for so many people who are fans, not everybody gets to get close to someone who is such a popular figure. What was he like?
And that's where your earlier point, Clinton, is right on the mark. What you saw on TV was not phony, was not fake. John really was an incredibly nice guy, warm and friendly, not overly outgoing. He's a Canadian, after all. But when you get to know the guy, man, if you're in, you're in. And John was sincere. He was down to earth. John maintained an amazing sense of humor. And believe it or not, in a book on depression, it should not be depressing to read. It should be inspiring. And John, even every 10 or 15 pages, will make you laugh. And he would do that in person as well. Even our long talks about all this very difficult stuff, John and I would laugh every 15 or 20 minutes. And it was not me who started it. It was John. So John was not defined by his depression, I would say that.
We're talking with John Bacon, author of Playing Hurt, My Journey from Despair to Hope. It's a memoir about John Saunders. I went to college with John Saunders' nephew, who played hockey at Miami of Ohio.
I know him well.
What we talked about at the time was him dealing with racism on the ice and so on and so forth. More generally, though, what was John like as a family man, in your opinion, as somebody who knew him?
Well, he's very close to the one I think John Saunders is named after Jim. After him, played hockey himself at Miami of Ohio. John played at Western along with Bernie, John's brother, as well as Ryerson University in Toronto. John does talk about race in this book as well because it's inescapable. And as a Canadian, he felt very little of that. But once he's in Baltimore and in Connecticut and New York, you can't avoid it, and he didn't. And that, he said, also can add to depression, no question about that. But as far as what he was like to hang out with, he was a ton of fun. And with his family, by the way, nothing is more important, as your question asks, than Wanda, his two daughters, Aaliyah and Jenna, his brother Bernie, father of John, and even his nephews and nieces he's very, very close to.
Last thing I'll ask you about this, John, what did you hope to accomplish by doing this? Not just what John wanted, but what you wanted.
No one's ever asked me that one. I wanted to honor John's wishes, and the reason we've worked so hard with Wanda and Bernie and his doctors in this last year is I gave John my word. So we had to finish this, and we want to do two things. One, present John in full everything to get it off, his legacy, if you will. And two, to help as many people with his story as we could, because that was John's goal as well. And for me, of course, is to honor my great friend's wishes, because he was a truly wonderful man.
He's John Bacon. He's the author of Playing Hurt, My Journey from Despair to Hope. It's the memoir of John Saunders, whom we all watched for many years on this family of networks. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Clinton.
The thing about John Saunders overall is that he was really, and it's particularly touching me now that, we're here at NABJ and you think about some of the faces that have come through not just this network, but the sports broadcasting industry in general. And while we've had a lot of people whom have been very famous, we were just lucky enough to talk with Gus Johnson, people who have been in my life, the Mike Wilbons of the world, and so many different folks who have sort of walked through here and in general in this business. John really was what I would call a titan. And and my words are getting short here because it's just sort of occurred to me how much of a hole his absence has meant for not just sports fans in this business, but for young black kids who grew up watching TV and hoping there was maybe some chance that you could find your way into the industry. And to see a face like John's, and he wasn't loud screaming, "I'm the black guy." He didn't have some, jokey persona that forced people to believe a certain thing about what we do and who we are. He was a genuine dude. And the story of the stuff that he went through is his personal tale. But don't get it twisted, man. Even though John Saunders wasn't the loudest guy, even though John Saunders wasn't the flashiest guy, John Saunders was very much the best in so many different ways. His presence is missed by every single person in this industry every single day, and his influence on who not just I am, but who we all are, is vast. Check out that book. You'll learn something about an important person. Coming up, I believe Marc Spears of The Undefeated is going to join us. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones here on The Right Time on ESPN Radio.
Thanks for listening to the Right Time Podcast. Please come back tomorrow for more. And don't forget to listen to The Right Time with Bomani Jones from 4 p.m. to 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
Daddy, where do babies come from?
Honey?
Mommy went to the store.
Oh, well, you see, there's a mommy and a daddy, right?
Right.
And see, when they call Geico, they could save a bunch of money on car insurance.
Oh, really? And that makes them happy?
Yes, that makes them very happy.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we could have this talk, sunshine.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Welcome to the Right Time Podcast. The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Say hi to the bad guy, kiddos. You're listening to The Right Time on ESPN Radio. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones here. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. You want to talk to me? Get at me on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. Joined by me right now is Marc Spears, senior writer for The Undefeated and chair of the NABJ Sports Task Force.
Yes, sir.
Marc, let's talk a little bit about what we're doing here.
Hey, do I get free Pennzoil?
Yeah. You do put a lot of miles on that car out there in California. But we've talked to a lot of different people because we're here live in New Orleans at NABJ.
Yes, sir.
On the floor. Talk to me a little bit about what your experience is here with this organization in terms of how long you've been involved and what you think it means in general being in this business.
Well, this convention will be number 22 for me. I've
Okay.
only missed one since 94.
Wow.
In 94, I was actually an intern.
People are messing with Marc, by the way, as he's trying to talk here. Anyway, go ahead.
No, I was struggling to get any really solid internship, and actually the NABJ gave me my first major internship in 94. And when I say major, I'm talking about Grand Rapids Press.
Wow. Okay.
So I went to Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I had applied as a student in San Jose State for about 30 internships that summer.
Wow.
That was the only one I got. And so not only did I get the internship from NABJ, and I think I was one of the bottom of the barrel people they picked, they sent me to the convention, wrote on the convention paper, and then everything changed, man. Everything changed from there. Ended up during my senior year at San Jose State writing at the San Jose Mercury News as a prep writer, and then I got an internship at the Dallas Morning News, which at that time for people in Texas, that was the best sports page in the country.
Right.
It was 75 pages long on Sundays.
That is unheard of these days.
It was a great sports page. I mean, things have changed, but, I'm forever indebted to the NABJ for giving me a chance.
So now as part of leading the sports task force, what does that entail?
Well, the sports task force is basically, to explain what task force, there's several groups within the National Association of, black journalists where, there's an entertainment group, there's a new, television, radio group, art, photography, well, we're sports. So the sports group, the task force, includes all the black sports journalists across the country. Could be some in Canada, Caribbean, all over the world. And so as the chair, I basically look over all the black sports journalists in the country, and we have a board and everything.
Okay.
So we help with mentoring. We help with helping people get jobs. We help be there when somebody's down when they lose their job.
Right. Big part of things.
Yeah. We're like family, man. You know,
Right.
and as you've seen from being around here, it's a big fraternity, sorority. We all look for each other and help each other grow. And I think now, as I guess you could say, a veteran journalist in this thing, you know, it's more important for me to like shake a bunch of young kids' hands and see what I could do to help influence them for the future. Because, shoot, maybe we might need a job from them one day.
Very true. We're talking with Marc Spears, he's the senior writer for The Undefeated and chair of the NABJ Sports Task Force. The Right Time is brought to you by Firestone Complete Auto Care, keeping cars running newer, longer, whatever you drive a Firestone. Marc, you were putting some miles on that passport. Forget about the car.
Man.
You were down in Joburg,
the
home away from home for my family,
for
for the NBA Africa game. Tell me a little bit about that experience as far as, what is the third year now that they've done this?
No. Well, the NBA Africa game is the second edition of it.
It's the second edition, okay.
Second edition.
Tell me a little bit about that
years.
experience and what it was like being in South Africa, a place I know quite a bit about.
Yeah. Basketball Without Borders is basically the thing that brought the game there. This is the 15th year that they had it in Africa, and this one was in Johannesburg. And for African kids, man, Basketball Without Borders is like their discovery. You know, it's their it's America's Got Talent, or it's their whatever that singing show was that
The Voice.
The Voice, yeah. You got kids from all over the continent. You know how vast that continent is, coming in, and people don't know who they are, and it's a life-changing potential thing. These kids, and there's about 50 kids there, they could get a high school scholarship out of it in America, a college scholarship, or maybe get discovered from the NBA like Joel Embiid did and Gorgie Ding did. But the game this time was bigger than it was 2 years ago. I think people, Ebola was kind of messing with folks still mentally a little bit in a silly fashion, but because it wasn't a threat in that part of the continent. But Chris Paul was like the headliner. Man, this year they had DeMarcus Cousins, Porzingis, Nowitzki, Kyle Lowry.
They had some names.
No, they had some people there. Kemba Walker. And so to be at that game, man, was special. To be at a game in Johannesburg and hear the fans chant for Team Africa, it was Team Africa against Team World, all NBA players, Africa. Like, I wish I could have seen you there.
Right.
You probably would have brought a chair to your eye. You know what I'm saying?
For those who don't know, South Africa is a place where a lot of my family has lived for different reasons. Not that we're from there. It's just a place that we're taken there because of, obviously, but apartheid existed in South Africa up until the 90s, and it was a state-ruled caste system of racism. And so to see uplifting scenarios in that country specifically for black people is really something remarkable that when you're on the ground is palpable.
Yeah, no, I trying to get some B-roll for different things. I got to tour the city a little bit, and that city got money now.
Oh yeah, Joburg, they ain't playing around, man.
This ain't no hood now. They didn't send me to no big jungle or like stereotypical that people think. There's a lot of places in the United States that probably wish they were as nice as Johannesburg.
We're talking with Marc Spears, senior writer for The Undefeated and chair of the NABJ Sports Task Force. Let's get to some actual basketball stuff, and we led the show with this. Zebo, man. Zach Randolph getting arrested with his squad. He's out, with them.
I just kind of half saw the story.
Okay, well, here's what happened.
So
I just want to know what
happened.
your thought is.
Yeah.
He was involved with a situation in which the cops pulled up on some people. They're smoking weed, they're drinking, whatever. They're hanging out. As the arrests are being made, apparently the group of people involved started throwing bottles and stuff at the cop cars to the point that some people might say evolved to a riot type, not riot, but like inciting a group situation. My point is that Zebo's 36. It's 11 o'clock at night. And, I wonder what you think about how this looks for a guy who's supposed to be a veteran going into that Kings locker room at this stage of his career.
I hope it's not true for his sake.
Okay.
I hope it's not. I've actually enjoyed his evolution.
I do too. I like Zebo.
From a jailblazer to now, and I know the Kings have done a lot to right their ship, and we're looking forward to him being a part of the youth, to helping out the youth of the team. But, with that situation, what do? You know what I mean? I hope it's a misprint there somewhere. But I'm not going to hold my breath. But my dealings with Zebo have been great.
Mm-hmm.
He's always been extremely professional, extremely nice to me. So I'm a hold judgment, man.
Fair enough, man. I like Zebo.
Because every time I've been around him, it's been a great experience. So I'm going to give the brother the benefit of the doubt and hope that there's something wrong with that story.
I hear you, man. I just hope that, for me, it's more of a leadership thing. You know what I'm saying? But last thing I'll ask you is this. It is. Last thing I'll ask you this, Marc. Where do you think Carmelo goes to Houston, and if so, do you think he's a good fit there?
I know he wants to. I've been basically told that he has no interest in returning to New York, and he'd love to go to Houston. How it works, if he gets there, time will tell. There's only one basketball.
I made some controversial statements, and I said that I think Carmelo at that stage, if he's going to be good on that team, he's going to be relegated to a sort of a side role as just the shooter, because I don't think that guy could score 20 points a game on that team and have him be good.
I think Carmelo knows that there's going to be a point in his career where he's probably going to be more of a power forward than a small forward. As a power forward in that offense, I think he's really dangerous. I think he would really like to go there. Him and Chris Paul and, James would be interesting, certainly interesting. But, man, the way the Warriors keep loading up, their team's coming back. I don't know that they're shaking in their boots at all.
He's Marc Spears. He writes for The Undefeated, and he's the chair of the Sports Task Force here
at NABJ.
I'm glad
you're here, man.
Thank you,
Again.
fam. I'm out here, man. I'm trying to do my thing. Coming up, we're going to talk with Kofi Yeboah of Sports SB Nation. I can't even say that right. We're going to talk about social media and how it's affected the sports industry. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones on The Right Time on ESPN Radio.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Wait for it. You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates on ESPN Radio. We're presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Get in touch with me through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. Joining me right now is Kofi Yeboah of SB Nation, who probably wasn't even born when that song came out, but that's fine. The reason why we played it is because Sir Mix-a-Lot tweeted at me yesterday. He was listening to the show. Shannon, what did you think about that tweet?
I was super excited just to know that he was listening. I was like, yes.
Very cool to hear from the old legend of Seattle fame. But, Kofi, you do social media. I'm going to tell the people about when I first met you. You were interning, associate producing, whatever it may be, at The Undefeated. And I was like, man, this dude's social game is hilarious. Now, you're at it for SB Nation. Let's talk a little bit about this. For a guy like you who's a sports fan, what you all do over there is vital to your operation in terms of social and everything it means. How do you view your specific role in terms of what you do and how you approach your game in social media?
I think my goal for the website is to try to be as creative as possible to get people attracted to the website, whether it be by something new or something old that you've seen before, using new platforms, always experimenting, always trying to be creative, always trying to push and take risks. I think that's very important to social media, and that's what we try to do at SB Nation.
Who do you think in the sports game right now, and I'm talking about athletes, is one of your favorite social media people? Because, it's one thing for brands to have what they do, but ultimately the people who play the game are sort of a big deal. Who do you follow and you think is good at it from your standpoint?
I think when Kevin Durant jumps on, he's good at it. Because Kevin Durant be chilling, but that day that Kevin Durant had time, oh, my God, I read all of that. Kevin Durant had time. There are some Brandon Jennings.
Okay.
I like the athletes that interact with their fans, even if it's positive. Oh, Damian Lillard.
Yep.
Yeah, they're not afraid to clap back. I like how the NBA is just okay, cool, that's cool. I just love the NBA Twitter fans, and that's my favorite league by far because it's the most interactive, I feel like.
Kofi Yeboah of SB Nation joins us here on The Right Time. Clinton Yates filling in for Bomani Jones. League to league, though, do you think the NBA, not just in the players, but as a league, has the best? Because we've seen college teams get into this. We see teams hitting each other from their official sites. I want to know, as a young man that you are, corny or not corny when team brands mix it up as if they are individuals with rando fans or other teams for that matter.
It's hilarious. I think it's absolutely hilarious. It depends on what the team is. Like the Hawks Twitter account is hilarious.
They are on fire.
And when NBA teams interact with each other, when they make jokes or inside jokes like that, it's great. I love it. I love reading it and be like, I think about it as the actual Hawks talking to the actual Kings. Like if it's the mascots tweeting with the thumbs and stuff. I know that the mascot thumbs are too big for the phone, but so I think the NBA just head and shoulders above the rest.
I know one of the things that you do is you do this bit where you're playing video games at NBA Live and all that. You've got a pretty involved situation. Explain to the people what that is and how you use, what is it, 2K?
2K, yeah.
2K to interact socially with a sports brand. There's a lot of melanges there.
Yeah, I just had the idea because I think weird. So I had an idea. It's like, what if Game of Thrones characters were actually playing basketball, right? So it took me about a week to make all 24 characters because I was just doing it over time.
Okay.
If I was actually focusing 100% of my time in it, would have taken like maybe 5 hours, no sleep.
Gotcha. Right.
So every week I decided that every episode I'll just have the teams play. And I decided to make a league with rules. I decided to make rules. So if a character dies, they're off the team, of course. Obviously, they can't play when they're dead unless they join the White Walkers.
Okay.
Then they join the team full of White Walkers, and the team afterwards, I combine everybody that's alive, and they're going to play against the White Walkers. And we're going to see who's going to win.
How popular is this? This is a pretty good bit.
I think it's popular. We get about 200. This is just via my Twitter account.
Right.
At least the max is like 200 at a time, But I think it's just interesting. It's just a fun little thing that I want to do and experiment with streaming video games via Periscope on the Twitter. Periscope did that. They opened up the producer thing so you can use RTMP streams now on Periscope.
Okay.
So it's really fun.
He's Kofi Yeboah. He does social media for SB Nation. You're listening to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates filling in. Tell me a little bit about who you think is at the forefront in terms of sports and social media. We talked a little bit about the NBA, but not just in terms of people, but what ideas? I mean, we've traded ideas here on your Game of Thrones NBA 2K bit, but what stuff do you see that you like right now that you think, man, that is quality sports social content that you genuinely enjoy?
I like video games, right? And I just think that the avenue of video games is endless and extreme in terms of what you can do, the opportunities you can create. And when people combine social media with certain video games, I think that's incredible.
Okay.
Because especially depending on what game you have, you can customize the content. You can make everybody like 7'7". There's so much versatility that you can be able to do. And I feel like when people combine the two, it's just amazing, no matter what.
Last thing I'll ask you, we're here at NABJ. You're a young man, and you've been here on the sort of other side in terms of I'm looking for something. Tell me a little bit about what your experience is with this organization and this week at the convention.
It's great. It's always good to be able to come back and see friends that you've met either on the internet or that you've met at past NABJ conferences. You get to keep up with them. You get to congratulate them for new successes. You get to possibly help them out if they got laid off or something. I mean, it's just a good support system here at NABJ, and I'm glad that I got introduced to it. And I would just like to thank my mom because when I graduated, her present was she made me a lifetime member at NABJ.
Wow.
And
that's a nice gift.
And when I saw that, I immediately just sat down and just started tearing up because she's the most important woman in my life. She has believed in me ever since I wanted to do this since 7th grade, and she's just been instrumental in making me an NABJ lifetime member. Man, it's just incredible.
He's Kofi Yeboah. He does social for SB Nation. Shout out your podcast. Tell him about your boy over here.
Oh, me and my boy Jesse, we do this podcast. It's called Kofi and Jesse because we couldn't think of another name. We couldn't think of a name. So we just basically have a mic in our room, We live together. We annoy each other. We just
two young 20-something black men talking about life on the come up. Listen to it. It's funny, and not just because it was my idea for them to do it. Where are you at on Twitter?
You can follow me at Kofi Yeboah. It might change to @Kofi, but the person that has the @Kofi handle has been at the store for 5 years, so I'm trying to get that changed. Her literal last tweet is, "I'm stuck at work until 9, sad face," and that was 5 years ago. I want that handle. But until then, it's @Kofi Yeboah.
Coming up, I'm going to talk to Myron Medcalf. He's an ESPN college basketball reporter. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones on The Right Time on ESPN Radio. Handcrafted, it's all the rage. From flour-pressed soup to homemade hot sauce to artisanal pickles, whatever those are. Well, Firestone Complete Auto Care is glad it's catching on because they've been handcrafting repairs since 1926, my guy. And their 4,008 SE certified technicians work hard every day to help keep cars running like new. Before people were making organic greeting cards and rock jewelry in their basements, Firestone Complete Auto Care has been hard at work in the garage, tightening, torquing, wrenching, and they back that work with their fixed right promise, guaranteeing your car is fixed right, your repair is priced right, and the work is completed right on time. Keep your car running newer, longer. When the road gets rough, you need a set of tires that can get tough. Right now at Firestone Complete Auto Care, get $70 by mail on a Bridgestone Visa prepaid card when you buy a set of 4 eligible Bridgestone tires. Whatever you drive a Firestone. Offer valid August 10th through October 8th. In-store only. Claim form required. It excludes Blizzak and restrictions apply. See claim form for eligible tires and details. Prepaid card is issued by the Bancorp Bank, member FDIC. It's the right time on ESPN Radio.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Welcome back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates. Filling in here on a Thursday. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance, and all guests on The Right Time appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. You want to hit me up? Get in touch with me through the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. You know, nothing makes a summer birthday or anniversary more magical than 1-800-Flowers.com. Right now, when you order a dozen multicolored roses for only $29.99, you'll get another dozen absolutely free. Go to 1-800-Flowers.com/ESPN. Joining me right now is Myron Medcalf of ESPN. You know his face, you know his name from the radio, from his stories. Covers college football and college basketball. But I want to ask you right now, because we've been discussing this. Obviously, we're live in New Orleans at NABJ. What is your experience with this convention, this organization in general, in terms of how you feel about it and how it may or may not have helped your career?
Well, I think the number one thing is you know, man, when you're a minority in this business, you show up a lot of places and it's just you. You go to a lot of venues, a lot of games, a lot of events, press conferences, and it's just you. And unless you've experienced that, you can't understand what it's like. So I think when you come here, it's like, man, you're not alone. You know, it's other people going through the same experiences, and there's a sense of unity that I think that you just can't match. And for me, I love, you know, all the young folks I've met here over the years and tried to mentor people who've mentored me. And I think it's a great event to help those of us who are like young, up and coming. And it's also great to just network and stay in touch with a lot of people who are trying to make moves. You know what I mean?
How many years have you been coming?
This is like my 7th year.
Okay.
Really.
All right.
Yeah, overall.
All right.
I got a scholarship from NABJ back in the day that was huge for me in college.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
That's the kind of things that NABJ does for those of you out there listening who might want to get into this business.
Yeah.
That's a huge deal. You know, it's not just for pros.
No.
You know.
It was huge. It helped me.
Yeah, well, that's good. We're talking with Myron Medcalf here, college football, college basketball reporter for ESPN. Let's talk a little bit about this fight, though.
Yeah.
You're going to be doing the pre-show and the post-show on Conor McGregor and Money Mayweather. Money came out yesterday talking about, I think I might be a little slow.
Yeah.
I'm in my older age. Nobody's buying that nonsense. What did you think about what he had to say most recently in terms of trying to juice this fight for a little more than it probably has?
I think every time Floyd does an interview, he's just trying to sell more pay-per-views. Trying to, like, you know, trick somebody else into buying the fight that might think he's weak, too old. But the bottom line is you could tie up one of Floyd Mayweather's hands, and I think he'd still win this fight. Here's my thing about the fight. Conor McGregor should have challenged an aggressive fighter. He should have challenged a Canelo Alvarez or a Triple G, guys who are fighting in September.
Yep.
Because at least you know, okay, 2 big guys slugging it out. Anything can happen in a war like that. Floyd Mayweather, his entire career is based off of being a defensive fighter. Like, he is the most elusive fighter in the history of boxing, right? And they're bringing out all these people to say, here's how you beat Mayweather, and none of them beat Mayweather. None of them touched him. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it doesn't make sense to me why they just keep lining these guys up.
One of the things that I've found interesting about this is that, for me, Mayweather has no real win-win situation here. Like, okay, so let's just say he pummels him.
Yeah.
All right. Let's just say he gets hit harder than he normally does. Or let's just say maybe something crazy happens and he loses. There's no scenario in which I think a Mayweather fan walks away from this and says, oh, I'm really glad he did that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I don't really understand, obviously beyond the money, what his motivation is going to be in this fight. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I mean, $300 million, if that's what he's actually making, is
that's
number
a lot of
one.
cash.
That's,
Don't get me
that's
wrong.
a whole lot.
Yeah.
But I think what he is after is embarrassment. Like, I think he wants to – I think he knows he can beat Conor any day of the week. I think he knows he could knock him out, punish him. I think he wants to drag this fight out and just embarrass Conor and really stand up not just for himself but for the sport of boxing and say, look, what you guys do is amazing in the UFC, but when you've been in the game like I have, you know, for 30 years, boxing since he was a kid, you are nowhere near the level that we're on when it comes to throwing hands. And I think really that's his aim is, I don't want to just beat this dude. I want to embarrass him.
Okay.
You know, and make everybody remember how I embarrassed him years and years later. Kind of like Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, the second fight, right?
Yep.
Where he was just toying with him, throwing punches. That wasn't about beating him. He wanted to embarrass him. And I think that's what Floyd wants.
We're talking with Myron Medcalf here. He covers college football, college basketball, and fights for ESPN. It's the right time with Bomani Jones. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Thursday live from NABJ in New Orleans. Let's switch gears here a little bit to college football. Josh Rosen, the UCLA quarterback, came out and made some interesting comments about how basically football and school at that level are effectively mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
Now, of course, that's not the case at every single school or with every single sport. What did you think about those comments in terms of not just what he said about Alabama, because it wasn't necessarily about Alabama individually, but it was about the SEC versus a Pac-12, if you will. What did you think about what he had to say?
Well, I mean, in terms of the academic standpoint, he's right. You know, like these guys don't have time or the ability to work their rules that restrict what they can do in terms of working outside of their scholarships and what they do academically. These guys go to practice long before anybody else comes on campus. And I think people forget about the physical toll that comes with this. And now you got to study and do everything with that.
Which, incredibly, people forget about the physical toll of football.
Right,
you know?
right. You got to recover. So I think he was very accurate in just this idea of the NCAA has been playing this game for decades of getting a lot of free labor off these guys who are making millions off these guys. And now I think as some of these young men get smarter and smarter and smarter, they're going, wait a minute, we're being taken advantage of. You want me to go to school and you want me to play football? And then we laugh at these guys when they major in these goofy majors that don't demand a lot. I think it was like Ron Dane was like turf management or something. That was his major. We laugh at him, but it's like, no, these dudes are just trying to stay eligible because they don't have the time and ability to do all of this extra work. So I think he was getting at something that at the end of the day is, at what point are we going to pay these guys and compensate these guys for the money that they're generating for this system? You know, and I think guys like him will continue to push and push until I think the NCAA goes away, and there's going to be a new system that comes at some point that replaces them and allows that to happen.
Last thing I'll ask you here. Give me some storylines for this college football season coming up that do not involve USC's quarterback that we should look forward to in the college football season.
Well, Alabama's always a fun storyline, and in terms of, you know, for me, it's like, what happens if they don't win it again? You know, any other place, no big deal. You're Alabama and you lose again after what happened last year. I think that could be an interesting thing just for Alabama fans who are always over the top. Urban Meyer at Ohio State, you know, the way they got whooped in the college football playoff last year, like that was an embarrassing loss. I want to see how they come back. Young team could be really talented. No one's talking about Lamar Jackson, the guy who won the Heisman last year.
For Louisville,
Louisville. And Sam Darnold, everybody's talking about as the Heisman favorite. Like, to me, at some point, that dude shouldn't be overlooked, right? He could repeat.
Yeah,
Archie Griffin would be the first to do it since Archie. So those are some of the interesting things I'm looking at.
He's Myron Medcalf. He writes for ESPN. He covers college football, college basketball, and you can hear him ahead of the Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather fight. What's the date on that again?
August 26th.
August 26th. You doing pre and post?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Myron.
Thanks, man.
Coming up, if you haven't heard, does the man who broke the Colin Kaepernick story think he'll get signed in the NFL? You'll find out next. I'm Clinton Yates, filling in for Bomani Jones on The Right Time on ESPN Radio.
The Right Time with Bomani Jones.
Back to The Right Time with Bomani Jones. My name is Clinton Yates, filling in here on a Thursday, live from NABJ in New Orleans. It's been quite the day. I've talked to quite a few people coming through here. ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. You want to hit me up? Hit me up on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed, at Clinton Yates, at ESPN Radio. Got a lot of interesting engagement, and that's part of the reason why we did this down here. NABJ is designed to help young people of color who are looking to be in the journalism business or are already in the journalism business thrive and find more opportunities. Today we talked to a lot of people who are in positions that I've known over the years, that either we've helped each other, I've probably helped them, but people I know and people I respect. One of those people, Tyler Tynes of SB Nation, came through to talk about the story he did on Will Smith, the New Orleans Saints player who was killed in the street in New Orleans, where we are. It's good to talk to old T. Steve Wyche, legend in the game of the NFL Network. You might remember him as the guy who first talked to Colin Kaepernick about his decision to sit during the national anthem. That was before he knelt. I keep saying knelt, Shannon. I can't decide if that's a word or not. It might be a word I'm just going to make.
It sounds good enough to me, so let's go with it.
To me. Steve Wyche is a legend in his own right. Forget about Colin Kaepernick, so understand that. And then, of course, Gus Johnson. I mean, legendary sportscaster in the game. He slid through in the Gucci sneakers. Shannon, he was legit wearing Gucci sneakers.
Well, I like that.
We talked to John Bacon, who's the co-author of the John Saunders memoir, Playing Hurt. It was interesting to talk to him about Saunders, as I said before, who was a titan in this game. Forget about just being a person of color. As far as sportscasters go, you're not going to hear anybody more liked who is in this business. Marc Spears dropped by of The Undefeated. He's also the chair of the NABJ Sports Task Force. So we talked a little bit about his experience with this organization. And he was in Johannesburg, South Africa for the NBA Africa game, the second edition. Talked about that experience, so that was fun. Kofi Yeboah, the homie Kofi, as I like to call him, of SB Nation, dropped by. Kofi's got to be 23 years old. Maybe he's 22. Young dude, social game is crazy. He's always on the forefront of what, I don't want to say the kids are doing, but I'm just going to say what the social trends are. And I don't just mean in the context of, oh, he's on a lot of platforms. I mean the specific engagement stuff he does, I think, is actually very cutting edge. And that's why he is doing what he's doing. And then lastly, the homie Myron Medcalf came by. He covers college basketball and college football for ESPN. He's also going to be doing the pregame for the McGregor-Mayweather fight. So check him out. A lot of guests today, Shannon. So tell them what they haven't heard.
We know you can't be on top of all the news and information of the day. Now, if you haven't heard.
You mentioned earlier we had Steve Wyche of the NFL Network on. This guy broke the Kaepernick kneeling story. And if you haven't heard, here is Wyche discussing Kaepernick and whether or not he thinks he gets signed this season.
No one's going to come out and say, no, he shouldn't be on a team because he stinks or because of his political stance. That's just not what we do.
Right.
I mean, you just don't, because you never know. He could be on a team. He could get hurt. I don't think he's going to get signed. I mean, I've been saying it for months that I do not think
the ship has sailed.
I think the ship has sailed.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of the owners, they talk about blackball. I don't think the NFL came out and told teams don't sign him. I don't think the NFL cares less. Right now he's a backup. He's not going to be a starter.
Right.
Okay? But I think so many of these owners are, one, afraid of potential public backlash, even though that's BS because some people don't show up at the stadiums. There will be other people to fill their seats.
Mm-hmm.
I think they are more worried about law enforcement in their particular cities saying we're not going to provide security at your stadiums.
Okay.
We're not going to give you police escorts on your buses from the hotels to venues. I think they're more worried about that. And there is a military backlash. But you know what's interesting about this, Clinton, is the two teams that have publicly said we're interested in Colin Kaepernick. The Seattle Seahawks, the one team with the stones to actually have a face-to-face meeting with him, and then the Ravens, they have caught so much hell for not signing him. Not the 30 teams that have laid in the shadows, right?
That's a good point.
But the two teams that actually said, okay, we're interested in him. They're the ones catching the backlash. So now, why would those 30 other teams step out into the light? Well, they're saying, good Lord, the two teams that that express interest in him, they're catching hell. We're good right where we are because we'll let them take the hits. We'll just ignore the whole thing.
Actually, we're still here in the preseason and asking the questions of whether or not Kaepernick will get signed. Do you think, Clinton, once we get into the regular season and a couple weeks go by, are we still going to be asking those questions about Kaepernick once we get into the season?
Honestly, no. I think that the NFL takes up too much airspace, and once people start playing actual games and dudes start scoring actual touchdowns and people start caring about their non-actual fantasy football teams, the Colin Kaepernick conversation will go away.
The Miami Heat have announced that their fans attending their games this season will have to they'll purchase their tickets, but they'll actually have to use the online mobile device ticket. So essentially, they can't use an old school printed out ticket at the game this year. So everything is going to be scanned electronically on your mobile device. Good idea, bad idea?
This is an awful idea. This is galactically stupid for multiple reasons. Number one, people enjoy tickets and paper products as a keepsake. If you want to keep fans, give them something to take away from ball games so they can commemorate their memories. Secondarily, do they not realize that you're Xing out an entire socioeconomic group of people when you do this? Not everybody's got a phone. Sorry, I realize it's 2017, but this kind of accessibility isn't always there for people. This is not smart at all if you're the Miami Dolphins. I know they think they're forward moving, and it's probably designed to prevent scalping and trading, but overall, I think it's a little bit insulting to your fan base.
I would agree with that. Continuing with the theme of the NABJ, I would like to send a special thank you and shout out to Jasmine Alexander. She's actually one of the producers of The Six, and she helped out greatly today. We had, 7 guests on today, which made up 8 segments, and she did a lot of the legwork for that. So I wanted to say thank you, a special shout out, thank you for that, because part of the NABJ is, going out and speaking to these people who have these behind the scenes media jobs. So just a reminder that it's not the folks in front of the camera or in front of the mic, but it's a lot of folks doing the legwork behind the scenes.
Very well said, Shannon, and that's a part of what the vibe at NABJ is too. We both knew we were going to be down here. We knew we were going to have to do a lot of moving and shaking in order to make this broadcast work well. We don't always do remotes at ESPN Radio, but this is one that's worked out, and Jasmine has done a great job, as Shannon has done a good job as well, moving through all this stuff as I'm texting him like crazy just to make sure we can do a decent show day in and day out. So I appreciate that, Shannon. I just want to say this. For all of you young folks out here who may be looking to get into this business, like he said, it's not just one side of the mic. There's the other side, too. Coming up, Jalen and Jacoby. I'm Clinton Yates filling in for Bomani Jones. I'll see you tomorrow right here again from New Orleans. It's ESPN Radio.
Thanks for listening to the Right Time Podcast. Please come back tomorrow for more. And don't forget to listen to The Right Time with Bomani Jones from 4 p.m. to 7 Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app.
You're listening to Love Advice with Leanne. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Leanne. Longtime listener, first-time caller. Why, in your professional opinion, do you never take my calls off the air?
Is this Carl?
Yep, it's Carl. I mean, we had a few dates. Everything was great. I thought,
Well, when you switch to Geico, you could save a lot of money on car insurance.